Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Refuge from Narcissism. And this refugee video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous. And here's his story. I've never had a close relationship with my older brother, Tim. My brother was born in 1977, and I was born in 1981. When I was around 1 year old and he was 5 years old, we were both put into a foster home because our father was a violent alcoholic who beat up our mother. In the foster home, our foster mother, named Pat, favored Tim over me. She gave him all the toys he wanted and wouldn't give me the toys I wanted. I remember she gave me a Smurf when I wanted a G.I. Joe, and she gave Tim all the G.I. Joe toys. When I was around 4 years old, I took all of Tim's G.I. Joe toys outside the house and put them under the stairs where I was playing with them. It rained real hard soon after, and they all got buried in the mud. Tim was really angry at me over it. He didn't seem to want me around him before that incident. When he was playing games with the other foster kids, he said I couldn't because I was too small. There was a kid in the foster home who would beat me up and take my toys around age 3. Tim was never around to defend me. I had to defend myself and beat that kid up when I was age 4 since I grew taller. At age 5, I got adopted along with Tim into a family with a highly narcissistic, histrionic mother and narcissistic father. Tim and I were sharing the same room. Instead of wanting to be around me, Tim gravitated towards the golden child, Michelle, who was born in 1975 since they were closer in age. Over the next 10 years of living in that same room with my brother Tim, we never established a close relationship. Sometimes we went fishing with my father. Tim was into basketball, baseball, and watching sports, while I was more into mountain biking and reading. There were times Tim and I had a chance to be more friendly, such as on Thanksgiving, but he would still ignore me in favor of being around my cousins or golden child sister. After 10 years of living in that house, my parents got divorced, and because my mother was a feminist, she told my father to take Tim and I while she took the golden child sister and black sheep sister. Were the sisters also adopted? Were the sisters also adopted? Because this is, again, narcissists like to adopt kids, and they adopt them like they would adopt a pet. To split the kids up, the girls go with the mother, the boys go with the father. It's not the word. Look, as someone who had no relationship with his daughter for the last, for the last 10 years of her childhood, it's tough for me. It's tough. I got my own room when my father rented a new house. At the time, I was age 15. When I was around 17, my brother Tim started smoking crack. He stole my computer, money from me, my dad's work tools for his construction business, and my dad's guns to buy crack cocaine. I joined the army when I was 18 to get away from all this craziness and start a new life. After I got out of the U.S. Army, I moved back to Ventura, California, and moved in with my mother since the black sheep sister had moved out of her house and room was available. During that time, Tim was still having drug problems. Tim had 2 kids with a woman who was living in government HUD housing. One time, Tim went missing, and my grandmother asked me to try to find him, since she was afraid he might have killed him. He might have been killed by some people he ripped off for drugs. She assumed I knew Tim. She assumed I knew Tim well enough to know where he might be. I didn't know Tim that well. Eventually, Tim was found. He was doing drugs with friends and disappeared. That look, I was never that close with my brother either until, shit started going down. I was well into my 30s before things started going well with me and my brother for a short period of time because we were two very, very different people. Processing the bullshit very, very differently. During the holidays, when Tim came over, my anxiety was through the roof, being around all the narcissists in my family, since my mother was back in contact with my father after inviting him over. It was always awkward around Tim for me. He never apologized for stealing my stuff when I was a teenager. Another weird thing that happened was on Christmas Day, my golden child sister Michelle brings up out of nowhere in front of her husband and my parents that Tim one time tried to have sex with her. I'm thinking it's Christmas Day. Why would you even say that? Because there's issues going on. Because Tim hurts people. Obviously, you're not the only one feeling anxiety around Tim. That's why she would say that. That's why she would say that. You're writing about your brother, about your relationship, how he hasn't apologized. He didn't apologize for stealing your stuff while he's on for drugs, which is wrong and it's horrible being around drug addicts. Okay? Well, he's trying to have sex with her. He didn't apologize for that either. That's why she would say that. Tim went to rehab when I was around 25 years old and was working at a Salvation Army. He met a woman who was in rehab. They got married. They had 2 kids. Tim started inviting me over to his place, trying to establish a relationship with me. I was working a lot, so it was hard for me to go over, and I really didn't want to go to his place. One time I found the time and went over for dinner one night. It was really awkward because Tim was drinking beer and smoking a lot, having weird exchanges with his wife. He told his wife to calm down because she was doing things too fast and seemed really pushy about it. That was the last time I went over to Tim's apartment. A few years later, I found your channel and started learning about narcissism. Then I ended up going no contact with my parents around age 35. I called Tim to tell him about narcissism, and I'm not going no contact with our parents. Tim didn't answer the phone because for some reason his wife Jessica always answers the phone. I talked to Jessica and told her to let Tim know I wasn't going to be talking to our parents anymore. Then a few days later, I get a phone call from my aunt who leaves a message on my phone saying that she wants to meet me at my nephew's birthday party that Tim is having so she can talk to me about leaving the family. This was the aunt on my narcissistic histrionic mother's side. I didn't fall for the hoovering attempt. By that time, I know the smear campaign must be going on since Jessica told my aunt and my aunt told my mother. Tim never called me back. Jessica had a Facebook page where I contacted her and she started sending me harassing messages. She sent me a message that said, "Come on, it's been years and you suck. I don't even know Jessica. I don't even know Jessica very well." So again, it's another, they just want you to get over it. They just want you to get over it, live and let know. I mean, if you don't want to get over it, you don't have to get over it. They don't get to damage you and then tell you, that you got to get over it or minimize it because that's what they always do. A couple other things got under my skin with Tim around that time. I went no contact, was his bullying. A couple other things that got under my skin with Tim around that time, I went no contact, was his bullying me on the phone and bringing up stuff from our childhood to use against me. Right, but it seems like you guys are doing that to each other because you're bringing up stuff from your childhood that, the G.I. Joes, and he stole. Like, and the stealing when you were 17, he's older than you then. So, yeah, that's a little bit more valid. But we all carry our shit from our childhood. I was working and talking to him on the phone since he left a message about his birthday party being the next day. I called him back to tell him I couldn't go since I was waking up at 2 p.m. and had to go to work from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. the next day. On the phone, Tim starts saying over and over, "You're going to go," after I told him no, and I only had the choice to hang up on him or say yes. I said yes, I would go to his birthday party just to shut him up, but I didn't go. I think the real reason he wanted me to be at that party the next day was because it would be him, my golden child sister, and my parents. And, well, also he's trying to drag you back in to preserve your place on the chain. Obviously, he's higher up on the narcissistic ladder than you. Okay, so if you're going no contact, that means shit rolls to the next person in line, and that's him. Tim knew I would be the black sheep. There you go. Tim knew I would be the black sheep there, and if I wasn't, then he was the main target of my, yes, he was the main target of my narcissistic parents. Exactly. In regards to the things Tim brought up about my childhood, it was ridiculous crap. Tim was about 40 years old, and he looks at me and says to me, "You stole my G.I. Joes." Okay, so he's bringing this up to you. I gotcha. That's why you brought it up. Like he's been holding that against me since I was 4 years old. Well, he has. And that's why he never got close to you, because he's resented you. Because he's resented you. Then he says, "You didn't see him beat her out of nowhere," in reference to our biological father beating our mother. That wasn't true, since I do have memory of my biological father burning my arm with a knife in front of my mother when I was 1 year old. Around 1995, Tim and I were offered an opportunity to meet our biological father. I said no, and Tim was mad at me because our biological father died of alcoholism in 1998. And he missed his last chance to meet him. I didn't want to meet him, since when I was burned with that knife, my father said the reason he was doing it was so I could remember him. Tim is holding that incident against me as well. Tim's got problems. There's a reason why Tim ended up smoking crack. Tim's got problems. In one of my prior videos on your channel, when I made a phone call to my narcissistic father, he said, I always thought of Tim as the one that was in the middle of things all the time, but you were the quiet one. My father did one time threaten me, since I made him look like a fool when I was around age 7. Every night he would come home at dinner, he would say something along the lines of, "I do so much for this family every day. I work so hard for you to have good things." One night my mom says, "Not again, be positive," when he was saying that. Then the next time at dinner he started doing it, and I said, "Oh no, here we go again," and put my hands on my face. My father's face got all red and embarrassed. Later that night, he cornered me alone in the dark and said, "Don't you ever do that again." So maybe that's why I wasn't confident to be in the middle of things. Probably. I mean, well, it's almost over. So maybe that, and Tim pushing me out of the way since I was 4 years old. Do you think I was ostracized in the family partly because of my brother Tim? Do you think my brother Tim could have become a narcissist being around the golden child sister? What is your take on the family dynamic? I think you and Tim were broken. Tim more than you. I mean, even though you were burned with a knife. Tim was destroyed by your biological parents. Destroyed by them. He was down that road, okay, before he ever even went into foster care. He was done. They destroyed that kid. You know, look, those histrionic statements your father's making, like I do so much. I mean that's boom. Those are boomerisms. Those are boomerisms. And you being bounced around, okay, from going from your biological parents to the foster home, okay, where the foster home is giving Tim everything he wants and not so much you, okay. People play favorites. Those places are riddled with friggin' sociopaths and narcissists anyway. Also, they could have told, look, you don't know what your brother's file said at the time. They could have been, Tim needs extra care. Tim needs, because of what he experienced, because he was older at his age and his ability to understand and remember what had happened, Tim needs X, Y, and Z. He needs, I don't know, but it's a possibility. And Tim holds resentment for you because in Tim's mind, and you will never convince him differently, you got off way easier. You got off way easy. Way easy. You got burned with a knife at 1 year old. He was there for what? He was born in 77. So what? He was there for another 4 or 5 years. He spent 4 or 5 years there that you didn't. Where he was utterly destroyed. And you don't understand this. You're going to foster care with your brother. That's the one thing you know is your brother. And he's rejecting you because, you know, in his mind, he probably thinks the only reason you got taken out of that house is because your father burned you with the knife. Not because of the 4 or 5 years of abuse that he was putting up with, but until you got burned with a knife, then they did something about it. So he has a resentment for you. So that's why, you know, especially as a kid, he would have treated you the way he's treating you. And it makes sense why a kid like that would end up eventually, you know, a hardcore drug addict and alcoholic. And it'll also explain you being so timid, you know, you don't want to be rejected, you don't want to be passed around. So, like, anything your father says to you, your adopted father says to you at that point where you go out on a limb and you make a smart-ass comment, you know, is fear of you just being ostracized and rejected outright. I don't think the sister had a lot to do with it. Honestly, I think your brother legitimately tried to abuse your sister because your brother's got major problems. He just has major problems. So, I mean, to endure what your brother probably had to endure makes sense why he is the way he is. And, you know, when he brings up things like from when you're 3 years old, 4 years old, G.I. Joe's, like, you know, I'm just a kid, right? We're both kids. I went through the same thing as you. We were children. And that'll be the hardest thing to ever make him understand. And he probably won't. Okay? Because he was damaged before he ever left your biological parents. He was done. They break you early. And then that's it. Once you're broken, and you're never the same. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much for another contribution and story, Anonymous. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like me to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, and email links in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Refuge from Narcissism. Take care, everyone.